Hi, I'm Jono and I do pencil drawings. In this video, I want to teach you how to draw a mouth step by step and take you through it. And then hopefully by the end of it, you'll have a pretty cool drawing. Also, a huge thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Okay, let's go over some of the tools I'm going to be using. I'm going to start off with a 2B mechanical pencil. Some people call them clutch pencils. This is just simple because you don't have to sharpen it and you can get your outlines and proportions and everything right, doing really fine pencil work. I'm also going to use this for just light shading as well. Then I'm going to jump straight into an 8B pencil, which I know a lot of artists don't really use 8B, or they'll move up really slowly through all the grades or hardnesses of pencils. But I really enjoy using like soft graphite. I like being able to push it around. I feel like it's more malleable, I guess, especially with the style that I work in. For this drawing, actually, I want to do the whole tutorial in pencil first, and then I'll kind of go more into my style of doing things, which is working a lot with cotton wool and blending and pushing the graphite around and trying to get like soft tones and stuff through that. With the cotton wool, I'll be using my kneadable eraser a lot. These are amazing. If you haven't got one, pick one up. They're brilliant. They're super dynamic and yeah, essential. And then lastly, I'll be using a Tombow Mono Zero eraser. These are just really great little erasers. They've got a really tiny nib, so you can do some fine details like hairs and tiny little highlights and stuff. So yeah, let's jump into it. Okay, so I'm going to start with the two indents on either side of the mouth. This just gives me a nice idea of how wide the mouth is going to be. It's pretty simple. And then I'll move on to establishing the line where the two lips meet. To get this right, usually I'd like to try and do the bottom of the top lip below the cupid's bow. This is usually slightly above the two ends of the mouth. If you're looking directly on, the lines would angle down. Then I'm going to try and establish the tops and the bottom of the lips. The top lip is usually thicker than the bottom lip depending on your subject. Obviously, everyone's different, but in this case, top lip is quite a bit thinner than the bottom lip. And then we can start establishing the volume of the lips. For the top lip, there's about 5 fleshy deposits to keep in mind. There's a smaller one in the center, which is in front of everything else, surrounded by 2 larger fleshy deposits on either side. This will either be bigger in more full lips, or if you're drawing a male, usually these are a bit smaller. And then on either side of these larger deposits, there are 2 smaller deposits tapering off towards the corners of the mouth. For the bottom lip, there are 2 large, you can kind of draw 2 large ovals that are smushed together, or let them overlap a bit. And it can be a little bit, or I find it a bit tricky to try and get these in proportion. It just helps you get an idea of the shape of the lips. Next, we're just going to get a bit of an outline for the lips. This is really just a guide, so keep this as faint as possible. You don't want any harsh lines when describing the lips. We're going to use shadows to do this in later on in the tutorial. But this also, I just want to get an idea of the top lip, how the cupid's bow forms. On each person, this is different. So in this case, I want to try and just make sure that I'm getting it right. And then we can also draw the philtrum to get an idea of how the mouth connects to the nose. Okay, I'm just going to kind of darken some of the lines out so I know where I want to work, and I'm going to start shading in the top lip. In this case, the light is coming from the top, so the top lip will be entirely in shadow, and any light on the top lip will be a reflection from light being cast on the bottom lip. If that makes sense. I don't know if I've explained that well, but for now, yeah, we're just blocking in all the shadowed areas. Just keep in mind here that the mouth is not a straight thing. It wraps around your face, so it is round from side to side. The front of the mouth will be quite a bit more forwards than the 2 sides. Okay, and filling in the cast shadow from the top lip. The top lip will cast a bit of a shadow on the bottom lip, and obviously this is important to keep in. And then we'll move on to the shadow of the bottom lip, which is how we're going to define the bottom lip. This is tricky. People want to draw a harsh line here, and it's always a little bit of a delicate one to try and navigate. So do this slowly, try and kind of iron it out a bit. Okay, and the bottom lip will also have a shadow in itself, well, cast from itself, because it's quite a round protrusion. Then also just keep in mind where your highlights are going to be. This is an area you want to mark out. Try to keep this area in mind. Don't go over it with anything until you're ready to start defining some detail in this area. Okay, I've pretty much got most of the areas that I want to put into shadow in my mind, and so I'm going to switch over to my 8B pencil and start going a little bit quicker with applying graphite to the paper. A really helpful thing to do is to add contour lines. This is also really good practice just with perspective, and it kind of like helps your brain wrap around how the lips are going to fill or how the volume of the lips are going to be. So try and get an idea of how your contour lines are going to go. Your center line will be straight, even though the lips are obviously have volume to them. We're looking directly on. And as we move to the sides, the contour lines will slowly bow around. Okay, and now I'm just going to go back into it with my 9B pencil and really try and get my shadows to get some contrast going. I'm being careful just to leave a bit of area open for the reflected light from the bottom lip on the top lip. I'm not entirely sure how, this is quite a tricky thing. Often your mind tricks you into thinking that this is a lot brighter than what it is. And that's actually happening to me now. I feel like I need to not add any tone here, but in actual fact, it needs to be quite a bit darker than what I'm doing right now. The shapes we drew before, the 5 ovals, come in handy as well when just trying to get the contours of the lip right. So I'm going to use those to guide me a bit, and then I'm just going to try and get some detail in here. I'm not really that happy with how this detail is coming out. It's more of just a placeholder for how I'd maybe want to try and render the lips. Often you find you'll try and do something, maybe it doesn't always work out the way you wanted to, and you can try and come back to it a bit later. Something I tend to do actually is I'll work on something, and if it isn't working out the way that I want it to go, then I'll move on to a different area of the drawing. And while I'm doing that, I'm kind of processing what went wrong with the parts that I was trying to draw. And I think that's quite important when it comes to learning stuff, is just obviously to reflect on what you've gotten wrong. It's always an opportunity to try and figure out how you can maybe improve. So doing that actively while you're drawing is a really efficient use of your time. Okay, and now we're going to start sketching in a bit of the detail for the bottom lip. The contour lines we drew earlier are going to come in handy here in a big way. The crevices of the lip and the texture is going to probably follow these contour lines. You can move over your highlights a bit and try and, obviously the contours or I don't know what to call it, the crevices in the lip are going to be in shadow even though they're moving over this highlighted area. But just it's important to keep these lines quite clean. This is something I think I've picked up along the way, but there's a lot of diamond kind of upside down Y shapes in lips, or even in skin texture in general, and I think this is something to try and slowly get familiar with, because it comes in handy when you're trying to render any kind of skin textures. Try and avoid creating patterns. Try to keep if you like, cool, I want to do a bunch of upside down Ys, try to keep them a little bit random in shape or size, or maybe give one an extra limb or something like that. Because as soon as you start establishing a consistent pattern, you lose realism. It's very easy for anyone to see that there's a pattern that you've adhered to, or there's a shape that you've adhered to that isn't going to be how it would be in nature. Cool, and then I'm gonna jump in and start rendering the detail here. Bear in mind that any crevice is going to create a bit of a bow shape with any horizontal lines. So that's another way to try and add a bit of texture. What we're trying to do the whole time is any texture you add is going to have a little highlight, a little shadow, and maybe some kind of a contour line or some kind of a establishing line to give it volume or shape. And the more you can pay attention to these small details, the more these details will enrich your drawing rather than just look like a flat texture that you've drawn onto it. You can start to see what I'm talking about with the bottom lip not necessarily having this harsh line, but more of just a texture change as it wraps around the mouth and starts becoming a lip from the skin just below the sides there. I don't know what to call this really, but I hope you know what I'm talking about. Something I think I should mention here is the way that you create the illusion of something appearing shiny or wet, like an eyeball, or in this case, these lips, is by manipulating the relationship between your midtones and your highlights. To have something look reflective, you need to have a stark contrast between your highlights and midtones. So where I marked out the areas that were going to be highlighted before, everywhere that meets a midtone, I've tried to keep that as like a harsh line, and that creates this illusion that it's shiny and reflecting more light. This is really important to get that effect, so just when you do this kind of drawing, make sure that these lines are quite clean. It's also why you need to keep your highlighted area as clean as possible so that this contrast can really pop and create the illusion that you're looking for. I'm pretty happy with the overall tones now at this stage. I'm not too happy with the top lip, but I know that if I can get back into it with cotton wool, I can soften it up and just maybe get a better kind of look, or get the look that I'm going for a little bit more. So I'm going to start working in with cotton wool and just kind of soften up everything. The cotton wool, I'm working with a clean piece here. So at first I'm just going to use it on the lighter areas, because obviously if you use it on the dark areas, it picks up more graphite and you have a risk of smudging more. So I'm smoothing out the lighter areas first, and then we'll move back into the darker areas. I'm using my 9B now to apply a little bit more graphite to kind of move around with cotton wool, but I very quickly realized that it's taking too long, and I'm going to grind down some 9B graphite powder and use the powder directly onto the paper rather. It's just a bit quicker this way, and it's more comfortable for me to work like this. You can also see the effect is quite different. You get a really rich tone when you work with graphite powder like this. I haven't been able to buy graphite powder that goes this dark, so I always have to try and buy a 9B graphite stick and then sand it down with sandpaper. I get asked a lot how I get my dark backgrounds, and yeah, this is how I do it. You have to push quite hard and just work quite carefully. Make sure that you don't smudge too much, and if you do smudge, just clean it as quickly as you can. I'm going to go back over the top lip now. It really needed to be in a lot more shadow, and again, like I keep doing this a lot actually. As soon as I'm thinking about something or struggling with something, I'm going to move to another area, try and figure it out while I'm cleaning things up, and then I'm going to go back into it. Trying to render the texture on this top lip is really tricky. It's such a subtle thing. It's a reflected shadow, so it feels like it should be lighter than what it actually is. Okay, cool. At this point, I'm pretty happy with how this is coming out, especially that right part of the top lip. I felt like it got a little bit of that feeling of depth in the creases of the lip. Not so much in the left, but I didn't really figure it out. That's how it goes sometimes. I guess it's always just trying to figure out a bit of a puzzle. And now I'm just going to have some fun. I'm just going to fill in little hairs and pores and things around the mouth to just give it that extra little bit of character. And yeah, there we go. I just want to give a quick shout out to this video sponsor, Squarespace. I've been working with them for quite a long time now, and they've helped my career out in a massive way. And I don't mean with these sponsorships. I mean, they made it so easy for me to make an online portfolio and get my work out there. I think for anyone who's trying to make it a creative career, having a portfolio to get clients to find you or help clients find you and making it easy for them to get in touch with you is so important. And I just felt that Squarespace did that effortlessly. I never had to patch or upgrade anything. I could register a domain with them or set up an online store. And most importantly, I could design a portfolio and show my work the way that I wanted to. Also, every time I got stuck, their amazing support team helped me out instantly. So if you're looking at building a website, give Squarespace a try. And if you decide that you love it, use this offer code and get 10% off your first purchase. Okay, so I hope you guys found that video helpful. I hope you could follow along. I'd really love to see your drawings. I need to set up like a website, not a website, an email address or something, where you guys can like, I don't know if you'd be interested in submitting some of the drawings and then I can try and like review it or give you some feedback or something like that. That might be pretty cool. Let me know if you want to see that. Let me know in the comments what you want to see next. And if you enjoyed it, leave a like. It always helps the channel out in a huge way. So yeah, thanks for the support, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.